Okay guys, welcome back to a very special edition. By popular demand, we're joined by Mr. Larry Cheung.
Hello, hello.
Nice to see you in the flesh.
Thank you.
So, we're going to stray away from our usual routine of testing clubs, testing different club fitting theories and different thoughts that we have. And we're actually going to dip our toe in the water in the instruction series.
Yes.
And we're not specifically,
No, not specifically.
We brought in an expert to help us with that. So, most of you who follow the channel, a lot of you will sort of cross over into Larry's channel. Your YouTube channel's been going now for over a year now?
Yeah, it's just over a year and a bit.
And it's been growing nicely, lots of phenomenal content on there. But I think a lot of you who haven't yet been onto Larry's channel will know that we reference Larry a lot because both Matt and I work with Larry on our swings. And obviously, our swings have both evolved an awful lot over the last 18 months.
Good point.
Right, so we wanted to try and introduce a brand new series where we offer you guys some of the value that we get from Larry on a weekly, bi-weekly basis on some of the things that we think will help specifically on this off season.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
So Larry's going to help with sort of, we are now end of October, which is hard to believe.
Yep.
Our season's about to end, and one of the things I would say, probably what you get asked most is, I'm not hitting as far as I want to, I lack in ball speed, swing speed, whatever it is. What can I do this time of year? Because it's obviously probably the best time to make, for sure, big changes versus trying to do this in April when you want to play golf.
What's your sort of almost sort of take on that from the people who come through your door?
Right.
How many of them discuss speed or reference the need
almost
to gain speed?
basically everyone, but maybe 1%.
Right, so that's not far away then. 9 out of 10 people would probably have a desire to get faster.
For sure.
Okay. So what does that look like then? How do you kind of lay out that roadmap?
Right, that's a good
for
question.
gain?
So realistically, for most players who just come to me, average golfer, let's say they shoot 90s or 100s,
Sure.
There is a lot of kind of retooling the backswing, for example. So if their backswing is in a bad spot, they're probably not going to make a fast enough move at it just because they're starting from a deficiency. So it's almost like if I were to jump as high as I can, right? My form would be so bad that wouldn't allow me to jump. Instead of kind of pushing down to the ground, loading, I might do one leg lower than the other leg, have my arms flying all over the place, and that's not really good form to propel myself up. So it's very similar stuff here where if the backswing's in a poor slot, then we can't really do it. The ceiling is very limited on how fast we can get. So we work in the backswing first. That usually takes half the off season. And then the second half of the off season is just really trying to pump things up and change how they move in the downswing and then go from there.
See, that makes a lot of sense because I think people watch drills. I don't think there's anything wrong with trying to self-coach a bit. Obviously, like you'll make videos on your channel that will help people, but I think a lot of people will go, this video is about creating clubhead speed. Meanwhile, all these things are really holding them back with their technique, and they go and do that clubhead speed drill, and it just doesn't really work for them because all these things are a mess, I guess, right? And I was no different. Like when I came to you, I don't recall talking about speed for quite some time because there was a mess to clean up in the backswing and otherwise. And then, as you said, it must have been 3-4 months in. Then we started to work on building speed.
Right.
One thing from one step removed that I've admired from afar is the work you've done with your online students. And I work with a lot of you students that you work with here in the city, but the ones who are overseas and remote that you do work with online, the ability that they've had to create speed is remarkable to me.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think that's where you guys are going to benefit from this. I don't want you to be watching this thinking that it's easy for Ian and Matt because they get access to Larry. They spend time with them and that sort of thing. You're basically going to lay out the same fundamental steps that these people online have taken to gain significant amounts of speed.
Right. I think the goal is to really make sure that we can share the proper cues or what they should look for in their body to become aware of if I'm doing it correctly or not. Or like you said, in person is much easier to implement speed and changes, but as long as the cue and the feel is there, then hopefully we can share that with whoever's watching as well.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, well why don't we jump on in? Why don't we jump on in and start talking about some of these fundamentals and some of the drills that really help extract that speed out of the golf swing.
Sure. So why don't we start with Matt? We'll kind of talk about what we started with and then what we're working on now.
Love it. Perfect.
So for a lot of the people who've watched Matt over the beginning of the beginning of your channel with very long and hingy swings. It's very, very narrow.
Yeah.
So what we needed to do with Matt was to get that hinge out. So in the traditional sense, people would have thought about creating power as hinge the most, hold it the most, like you were alluding to, what you were working on, holding it the most, and then from there it's let me time the release. But it really doesn't work like that, unfortunately, especially as the club gets longer, just because it's so long and there's so little loft. So you want to kind of make a backswing for us, and then kind of show us what you did earlier on when we first met.
It's going to be hard to go back.
Well,
just once.
The
Hit myself in
timing
the
of
ass
this
with
is
it.
interesting because recently we done a test when we tested your old ping,
Oh yeah, that's right.
and we tested it compared to your gamer right now, and we actually showed a few of those longer swings.
Got some laughs
I mean, quite amazing
for me mostly.
It was so different.
So different.
So different. So I think the biggest things with Matt, so let's talk about was the two hinge of a backswing with no depth. So he got straight up. So the high is great from speed. I love high, but there also needs to be depth as well. So deep depth being hands more back of his body. So if you can get your hands, so if you can get your hands,
here.
so this is no depth. Let's say his shoulders are here.
Right.
His hands are pretty much in line with his shoulders or maybe even in line with his head. That'd be the extreme of no depth. The depth will be moving his hands more back. And if you get your hands more back, it's basically strapping your lead arm across your chest, and that potentially gives you another power source. Where if I were to try to fling my arm as hard as I can, I want my body to go into my arm and then fling the arm off. Whereas what Matt was doing, he was basically starting from this angle. So he was basically flinging the arm as hard as he can this way with none of this. This just came along for the ride, which is why the speed was limited.
So that was an immediate sequencing issue?
Correct.
Because
It
of the
will lead to the
separation?
sequencing issue just because you're already not attached to each other. So that's one. And then the second thing, remember your very twisted lower body backswing where your hips went towards the screen or the target. So when you do it like that, so actually start again. So let's just say there is a line beside his lead hip, okay? The lead hip being the target side. So what he did was he turned the most and his lead hip actually moved towards the target. So if he moves towards the target, he's probably going to push back away from the target, which isn't exactly what we want to do.
In reaction, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Plus, in that scenario, there's no really pushing into the ground either. It's just pushing sideways in the wrong direction.
Yep.
Pushing sideways is already not what we want, but pushing sideways in the complete opposite direction where we want to go is probably not exactly the recipe for success.
Right. So we went from basically from here,
Yes.
all the speed came from one holding this angle for literally forever.
Right. I mean,
And
you have
also-
long limbs too, so it helps. But you basically maxed yourself out in a sense. Like you were fast, 168, 170 sometimes, like you guys were talking about. But
It was very erratic, though, wasn't
sure.
it?
Oh,
Yeah,
It was
one
in
would be
terms
like
of-
10 miles an hour slower.
right. And I think the playability aspect was definitely not very playable.
No.
So playability was number one, but the speed obviously just came because of all the improvements we worked on with how Matt moved.
So when you go, someone will ask, how do you get shorter,
Correct.
but faster?
Correct. That's a great question. So when you're long in some sense, so let's say with Matt, he was long with the hinge with no depth. He just relied on undoing everything. So he had to unhinge somewhere down here, sometimes time it, and he had to unfold his arms. So that's just basically just you're pulling up and pulling down. That's all you're really doing. So by shortening the swing a little bit, not only does the sequence improve, but it makes him have to think about different ways to create speed, which is let me start pushing off the ground a little bit harder.
So take us through, let's go through like the first 3 drills you and I did together.
Sure.
I remember the first one.
Right.
I'm pretty sure this is the first one.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure we just made swings with literally no hinge to start.
Correct. So for you guys and for people who've watched my channel as well, they know I'm big on feeling no hinge.
Feeling no hinge,
So feeling no hinge in the traditional sense of if you stick your hands in front of you, you cock your wrist upwards. That's the traditional wrist cock or the wrist hinge. Let's just call it the wrist hinge for this video. And you can see when that happens, his lead wrist is really, really cupped, okay?
Yeah.
So we don't want that. Because the more cupped you are when you come down, you're very steep coming down, which is, again, not what we want. So yeah, if Matt can
I was
demonstrate.
very much this way.
Correct. He's so steep, there's very, very hard to play golf from that position.
Yep.
So that was, number one was to just fix that first, which was feel 0 hinge, which in reality gave us somewhere around 90 degrees of hinge.
Yeah, we ended up probably like there.
Exactly.
And I felt like I was swinging like that.
Exactly.
And I remember the first time we all played golf together, and we'd been doing the channel for maybe a month.
Yeah,
And we'd been
Florida.
doing a couple of stuff, and we went down to Florida and we played down at the Four Seasons down at Disney.
Yep.
Forget what the course is called.
Oh,
now.
yeah.
It's now
So
private.
it was very
golf
nice.
course.
It was very, very
nice,
nice,
wasn't
It's
yeah.
a Four Seasons course, yeah.
And you were hitting it so nicely in the range. You were just, you were just
So
flushing
familiar.
it in the range. And we weren't in the same group.
Yeah.
You
We
guys,
played, yeah.
you
We
played
played with
together.
Cam and
Cammy,
one of your clients.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So you were in the group in front, and you were kind of in and out of the holes. And I remember catching up with you in a tee, going, "How you playing?" And you're like, "Yeah, lost a couple here and there." And I'm just going, "How does this guy lose a golf ball when you were hitting it? You were flushing it in the range,
And it's all and so that's the
all timing."
Right.
when Larry and I had our first couple lessons, that was the key for me because I think I'd chase different technique solutions, but none really ever made the difference in your swing is 100% timing 2 years ago, and now I don't know what the percentage is, but sure as hell isn't 100. Like it's a lot less.
Yeah.
For sure. And I think I saw it more because we're members of the same club.
Right,
Like
yeah.
you hit it great in here because there's not really any consequences.
Right.
No, there's no
But
consequence.
like on par fives, tight, it's like
Well,
who knows where it's going
Each
to go.
other-
you know what it is? You're answering the question that everyone in the YouTube channel has
Yes,
had
true.
for 2 years. Is through like, why does Matt play on tour, Canadian tour?
Right.
Why isn't Matt playing professional golf? And you've just answered that because this is an environment where it's like you can just be as free as you possibly can be. There's
For sure. It doesn't really matter what happens.
consequence to
Yeah,
what
for
goes
sure.
on. And by the way, if we see a shot we don't like, we can delete it.
It doesn't. It's not going to
Right?
matter.
That's the facts of it. And we're not delivering any value if we keep in those bad ones. So,
No.
but the difference has been so dramatic in terms of how much more consistent you've become. And we saw it in terms of the time it took us to film videos,
It's very true.
didn't we?
It's very
Like
true.
we became so efficient in okay, that one was just
It's raw. It's like the
Easy.
raw length versus the edited length.
Uh-huh.
Used to be a pretty big difference. Now it's usually okay.
you're investing in yourself by getting a better golf.
We're saving us both time.
Yeah.
For sure. So I guess back to Hinge.
Yep.
Yeah.
For you guys looking and filming yourself. So maybe you want to go to that camera. Is that the
This
camera?
way?
Yeah. So let's say when you go, if you're hinging too much, the club gets closer to parallel. You see less of the club. The less hinge you have, probably the further away the club is from parallel, the more club you see. So for you guys, I want us to be able to see more club.
Yeah.
In addition to that, because when you vertically hinge too much, your lead wrist gets cupped, okay? At the top of the backswing, for most players, you would benefit from having your lead wrist flat and your trail wrist bent.
Yeah.
Kind of like that. That's the wrist structure that we want. That typically gives us the most predictable face coming down and not hinging too much,
Yeah.
and it'll help you shallow the club out, amongst other
Love
things.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
that's
that's kind of
so
the key
Ticks a
thing
lot
to
of
look at.
boxes. Yeah.
And in that in itself, there can be so much speed lost by recovering
Exactly.
from missing out that key fundamental in the backswing.
For sure.
You're trying to recover the positions,
Right.
and you end up having to kind of dump the angles and just a bad
Right, and it's
chain
almost
of
like
events.
one thing feeling no hinge that fixes
Yeah.
a lot of different
Correct.
things.
It really did, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me especially.
For
Yeah.
sure.
So why don't we hit a couple shots?
Sure.
I wouldn't mind hitting a couple shots, getting a little baseline.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then I think part of where I really started to feel speed come in was probably a few months in when we
Yeah,
started
I think
doing-
right before we went to Florida was when we started
yeah,
hitting some pretty high benchmarks.
and some leg work, right?
Yeah.
So
So we'll go over some leg work for sure.
because I haven't done that with you in a while,
For
so
sure.
I wouldn't mind doing. Let's do a baseline, then we'll
Sure.
talk
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
that.
Of course. Yeah. Let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah, really good swing there, Matty boy.
Cute.
Yeah, 174. It's pretty good. So it's good to see your baseline swing is actually obviously a little bit faster than before, which
For
is
sure,
good to
yeah.
see.
Yeah.
So from what I've seen today, let's add the legs back in
For
because
sure.
you're not working the legs at all right now.
Not at all.
So first thing we should really do is just make sure your legs are moving a little bit better in the backswing to allow you to change flex properly in the downswing.
Okay.
So what it looked like to me from just watching that one swing was that your trail leg was staying bent for too long. So your weight actually,
leg?
yeah, your trail leg being, so you as a lefty, your left leg was keeping bent and your knee actually went out a little bit
'Kay.
because it was staying bent. That's better. So to turn properly in your hips, for your hips to turn, your legs have to change flex, right? So for you, you have to feel, exactly, that's really, really good there. So you can feel like your left hip goes back, your left leg straightens a little bit, doesn't lock out, but that's what we want, and that helps you keep the pressure on the inside of your left heel, running up the inside of your left leg. Do you kind of feel that? And you should feel like in your left glute, your left hamstrings, kind of just the back of your left leg.
So we're doing this so that once I've loaded up, I can press.
Then you can press, yes. Because if you're in your old position, so do your old position, your left, so you see how your left knee is still bent and it's out this way? It's hard to push into the ground, plus you're probably gonna hurt yourself later down the road.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, so get to the top again. So now make your new back swing with that new leg movement. Amazing. So now you got roughly 80% of your pressure in the inside left heel, right?
Okay.
I love that. You're nice and wide. I like that a lot. So we've talked about pushing into the ground, right? So to exaggerate it, what I want you to feel like you do is you're squatting and rotating at the same time, getting really, really low. So squat and rotate as you get low. Excellent. So now, and something that we've talked about before is you gotta be careful with is sometimes your hip tends to kind of shift backwards, right?
Okay, yeah.
You gotta feel like exactly, kind of like that. So if you're to, let's say there's a chair behind you, right?
Yep.
So if you're sitting or squatting into the chair, you're kind of squatting and sitting 1 inch away from the target.
I'm
see
drifting
that?
behind.
Right,
Yeah.
so the chair is 1 inch kind of left of you. You gotta feel like the chair is 1 inch or 2 inches right instead. Does that make sense? Yeah, that's really good there. You can see the legs change completely there.
Right.
Right.
So the first few swings were all about 121.
Right. I mean, the contact wasn't very good.
No,
but
I didn't hit
that jumped up quite a bit.
So that's
a big jump.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
that's
big
5
jump.
miles an hour without, I can promise you I didn't try harder. I just think I focused on a different part.
Right, for sure. One 178, not bad.
Yeah, that felt definitely different.
178, 125, not bad.
Yeah, so like that's a few really good swings that are at least 4 miles an hour faster.
Right. And obviously, the more you practice, the easier it is to get it back up.
Yeah.
Because you're not really going down too much at all, in all honesty.
No, I think it takes time for you to trust. Like that swing would encourage me to try a bit harder and then a bit harder and a bit harder.
Exactly. You're probably, maybe you might get 1 millimeter lower every single
time. Yeah.
Right. But after 100 shots, you'll be a little bit lower on video, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's quick. 125, 178. You know, if we know Matt's numbers and we baseline weekly about 172 to 174 anytime we're testing. So there's no question that's you sort of raising that. I love how the efficiency is going up. Obviously,
the efficiency's been low actually lately, so that's nice to see that be a little bit higher.
Pretty good. Nice sort of altitude on the strike. And we would expect that to start to come together as your timing starts to catch on to the movements you're making. You'll start to, match up that club face with your target, obviously the ball.
And I think part of it is like, I know today I've swung a few times like that, but it didn't feel that way. It felt like I'm going to hammer this hard and then maybe I'll get up to 125. That swing didn't feel, didn't feel like I swung fast. Just felt like
you got
lower.
had
some leverage.
I see. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I love it.
So those are kind of your number one things to
the
touch.
first few things.
For speed.
Just make sure the backswing is good first, and then I will look at the legs first. Really making sure the legs are propelling the movement, or initiating the movement, and then let that chain of events ride up your body, into your arms, into your hands, into the club, into the ball. That will be kind of the sequencing we want to see.
Versus me getting this way and trying to jam at it. Yeah,
correct. With no legs at all, which is what a lot of people tend to do.
100%. Cool.
Okay. Cool. Well, I think this is a great way to start the series. I think there's going to be so many things. Probably there's pieces of this video to watch.
For sure.
Watch part of it, maybe go work in a little bit of it.
For sure.
Take the next part, go work in a bit of that, because I think we fast-tracked the route to speed.
100%,
and I think there's probably you don't want to attempt all of that.
For sure,
once.
You gotta really be diligent with what am I doing first? Probably the backswing first. Then you get the backswing. Then you can add the legs or whatever it may be.
One step at a time with it.
Exactly.
Okay, guys, this is going to be an ongoing series, and this is really geared towards you guys making maximum amounts of improvement over the winter. we're just about to go into our off season here. So we're transitioning here at TXG into our winter program. We have our winter members coming inside. Most of those winter members watch the channel, so I expect to see a lot of them working in these things. A lot of them already work with you on their golf swings, which is fantastic. So we will start to see them integrating all these things. But speed is an integral part of the game now.
100%.
There's no doubt about that. And there's lots of different ways, and there's super speed golf's a great vehicle towards creating speed. But what we're really discussing here is the foundations that you can keep that speed, that you can own it. Right? So sometimes with these training aids or different things that you can have it and then you lose it. It's a bit like blowing up a balloon and then you let the balloon go. You don't own it forever. We're trying to build fundamentals and the real kind of physics behind building speed forever. Okay, long lasting.
For sure,
speed.
definitely.
100%.
Cool. Excellent. Okay, guys, hope you really enjoyed this. We're looking forward to this being a sort of winter-long project. Adding different instructors and experts.
For sure. So Larry's going to be back many times for sure. I want to do pretty much the same video specific to your backswing. Plus we're going to go through a ton more stuff with Larry. And then we're going to be visiting as many instructors as we can. Some different experts that are just going to help you improve other than just fitting. We want to kind of show you the whole package.
Brilliant, brilliant. Okay, exciting stuff. Stay tuned and we'll see you again soon.